Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, this time I would like to explain about Communicative Language Teaching or CLT. This slide prepared by Niswi Diakumala, Ahmad Jihad Satrio, Rahajeng Yusti Rismaya, Dodi Setiadi, and Celia Damayanti. And these are the outlines. The first is definition, the second background, and the third is academic influences, and then general principles, classroom activities, and criticism of CLT, and the last is example of communicative exercise. The first material is definition. Communicative language teaching or CLT or the communicative approach is an approach to language teaching that emphasizes interaction as both the means and the ultimate goal of study. The second topic is background. The first, an increased demand for language learning. Communicative language teaching rose to prominence in the 1970s and early 1980s as a result of many disparate developments in both Europe and the United States. First, there was an increased demand for language learning, particularly in Europe. The advent of the European Common Market led to widespread European migration, and consequently, there was a large population of people who needed to learn a foreign language for work or for personal reasons. At the same time, children were increasingly able to learn foreign languages in school. The number of secondary schools offering languages rose worldwide in the 1960s and 1970s as part of a general trend of curriculum broadening and modernization, and foreign language study came to be confined to the elite academies. In Britain, the introduction of comprehensive schools meant that almost all children had the opportunity to study foreign language. And then the second is change the teaching methods. This increased demand put pressure on educators to change their teaching methods. Traditional methods, such as grammar translation, assumed that students were aiming for mastery of the target language, and that students were willing to study for years before expecting to use the language in real life. However, these assumptions were challenged by adult learners who were busy in work and by school children who were less academically able. Educators realized that to motivate these students, an approach with a more immediate payoff was necessary. The last background is the trend of progressivism. The trend of progressivism in education provided a further pressure for educators to change their method. Progressivism holds that active learning is more effective than passive learning. And as this idea gained traction in schools, there was a general shift toward using techniques where students were more actively involved, such as group work. Foreign language education was no exception to this trend, and teachers sought to find new methods that could better embody this shift in thinking. The next topic is academic influences. The first academic influences is develop learners' communicative skill and functional competence. The second one, speakers having mastery over the structural elements of language. And then, able to use structural elements appropriately in different social situations. The development of communicative language teaching was also helped by new academic ideas. And then general principles. According to David Noonan, there are 5 general principles in CLT. The first one is an emphasis on learning to communicate through interaction in the target language. The second one is the introduction of authentic facts into the learning situation. The third is the provision of opportunities for learners to focus not only on language but also on the learning process itself. And then an enhancement of the learner's own personal experiences as important contributing elements to classroom learning. And the last is an attempt to link classroom language learning with language activities outside the classroom. The next topic is classroom activities. The first one is role play, and then interviews, then information gaps, games, language exchanges, surveys, pair work, and learning by teaching.
And now, I will explain about the roles of the teacher and the student change in CLT. The teacher's roles are as an active facilitator for students and preparing and monitoring students' exercise. And the students' roles are students must active during the lesson and participate in any classroom activities with confidence. Teachers in communicative classrooms will find themselves talking less and listening more, and becoming active facilitators of their students' learning, according to Larson and Freeman. The teacher sets up the exercise, but because the student's performance is the goal, the teacher must step back and observe, sometimes acting as referee or monitor. A classroom during a communicative activity is far from quiet, however. The students do most of the speaking, and frequently the scene of a classroom during a communicative exercise is active, with students leaving their seats to complete a task. Because of the increased responsibility to participate, students may find they gain confidence in using the target language in general. Students are more responsible managers of their own learning. Criticism of CLT. National syllabus was criticized as merely replacing one kind of list, namely a list of grammatical structures with another list of notions and functions. The various categories of language functions are overlapping and not systematically graded like the structures of the language. And the next criticism are a major principle underlying this approach as its emphasis on learners' needs and interests. The approach relies extensively on the functional notational syllabus, which places heavy demands on the learners. The requirements are difficult. Not all classrooms can allow for group work activities and for teaching aids and materials. And the last critique is the communicative approach focuses on the use of language in everyday situations, or the functional aspects of language, and less on the formal structures. There must be a certain balance between the two. And the next is example of communicative exercise. The first one is student practice speaking with others. And the second, students hear a recorded exchange between two men first meeting. In a communicative classroom for beginners, the teacher might begin by passing out cards, each with a different name printed on it. The teacher then proceeds to model an exchange of introductions in the target language. Selamat pagi, apa kabar? And the reply is, saya baik-baik saja. For example, using a combination of the target language and gesture, the teacher conveys the text at hand and gets the students to introduce themselves and ask their classmates for information. They are responding in bahasa to a question in bahasa. They do not know the answers beforehand, as they are each holding cards with their new identities written on them. Hence, there is an authentic exchange of information. Later, during the class, as a reinforcement listening exercise, the students might hear a recorded exchange between two men in first meeting each other for the first time at the gymnasium doors. Then, the teacher might explain, in English, the differences among bahasa greetings in various social situations. Finally, the teacher will explain some of the grammar points and structures used. The following exercise is taken from a 1987 workshop on communicative foreign language teaching, given for Delaware language teachers by Karen Willets and Lynn Thompson at the Center of Applied Linguistics. The exercise, called eavesdropping, is aimed at advanced students. And finally, the summary. The important part in communicative language teaching is the interaction between the teacher and the students. The teacher should be the monitor to the students and have to pay attention to students in classroom activities. And the learning process of CLT not only focuses on language, but also on the learning process itself. For more information, you can read on these references. Or you can email us on nisfikumala@yahoo.com. That's all. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.